Okay, we are ready to start, Mr. Chair.
Okay, it is Monday, July 20th, and this is the meeting of the Palm Springs Architecture Advisory Committee. It is 5:30 in the evening. Planning Director, please call roll.
Certainly. Mr. Dozy is excused. Mr. Lockyer?
Present.
Mr. McCoy?
Present.
Mr. Payline?
Present.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Vice Chair Rotman?
Here.
Chair Jakeway?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. May we have a staff report on the posting of the agenda?
Mr. Chair, the agenda was posted on Thursday, July the 16th. This meeting has been noticed and posted in accordance with state law.
Thank you. I would like to make a motion that we move item number 2, best signs, to the consent calendar. Do I have a second from any of the committee members to do that?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, do we have a motion to accept the agenda as amended?
Motion to accept.
Second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Lockyer. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, this is a public hearing. Flynn, has anybody from the public let you know that they want to talk on an item not on the agenda?
No, Mr. Chair, we have not received any requests at this point for anyone to comment under public comment.
Okay, so then I think we can move forward to new business. Item number 3, CBM2 Hotels for a minor architectural application to improve the building facade and add an 864 square foot fitness center at the Courtyard by Marriott located at 1300 East Tockwitz Canyon Way. Planning Director, I live within a 500-mile radius of that project, so I will be recusing myself from this discussion and vote.
Certainly. Mr. Chair, we will turn off your camera now. And with that, we will ask Mr. Rotman to go ahead and lead the meeting.
Yes, so this is item number 3, CB2 Hotels LP for minor architectural application proposing facade modernization. Did you do this already? An addition of an 864 square foot fitness center at the Courtyard by Marriott Hotel located at 1300 East Tockwitz Canyon Way. Do we have a report from the staff?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll share a screen now with a PowerPoint presentation. Can you see it all now?
No.
How about now?
Yes.
Yeah, here it comes.
Here we go.
Great. Okay, so this is the Courtyard by Marriott, which is on Tockwitz. The property was built in the early 80s, and there has not been any renovation to the property since then. So they're here to freshen up and redo the project. Let me get this to turn. So it's a 149 unit resort hotel. There have been no significant modifications to any the exterior of the project. They're looking to change the front facade and modernize it, and then add an 864 square foot fitness center addition at the back, the rear of the property off of the pool courtyard area, and also to do some landscape upgrades. So this is a photograph of the front portico shore as you come in. You'll see it's got a hip roof. They're looking to remove the hip roof and add a flat roof, and then add other elements to the exterior of the entryway. The materials that they're proposing to use includes a veneer ledge stone at the bottom of the columns, a fiber wall panel in wood grain appearance for the vertical elements where the sign will go, and the proposed they're going to also clad the stairwells, which are on the front facade, as you can see in this photograph here, and then paint the exterior of the building in a light gray and then darker gray for accents. And then the barrel tile roofs will stay the same. I'd like to point out in the rear, the top of this project, you'll see the little 864 square foot fitness center that will be added as proposed. So here are some design elements on the stairwells. So it's horizontal wood veneer panel. You have building architectural drawings in your packet, and this is of the north elevation of the fitness center building. You'll see that it's a hip roof, but the hip angle is a little bit different than the rest of the building, and staff was proposing that a different angle, maybe sort of a more cube look or a box, be proposed that would hide the AC units on the roof. In this perspective, you'll see that the facades are all glass, and staff that there is no glass. So a proposal would be to add some sort of canopies or other eyebrows that would help control the solar intake in these buildings. Here is another elevation showing how the hip roofs and then the well where the AC units will sit. As far as landscape, they're looking to redo portions of it towards the front where the sign is, where the entry into the portico shore is, and they're proposing a series of different types of plants, succulents, grasses, perennials, ground covers, Palo Verde trees, and then different shrubs to add color and redo the landscaping. So in your packet, there's a plant schedule showing the quantities and sizes. And then material board, as I mentioned, they're using the dry stack stone, and then the different grays, light gray and a darker gray for accent colors. I would like to say that on the upper portion, on the underside of the portico shore will be this fiber cement wall panel in a cedar color, and there'll be recessed lights up in the canopy. So there's a paint color concept, and you'll see the paint chips. As we mentioned, light grays, darker grays. And Chair, that concludes my report, and the applicant is here to discuss.
Thank you, Glenn. Are there any questions for staff? No. Glenn, I just have a quick one. Do you know, is there any other location that they're using the stack stone other than at the portico shore and entrance?
I think it is just at the columns of the portico shore.
Okay. All right, thank you. And the applicant is present, so you have 10 minutes to present and 2 minutes of rebuttal if desired after any public comment.
I think I'd like Michael Harper, our designer, to start off if he doesn't mind.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the presentation covered it pretty clearly. It's just a modernization of an existing building. The stack stone is just around the columns at the portico share. The portico share has been thinned out, and it will be metal. One correction: there will be a metal cladding underneath the portico share in a dark bronze. The Nichiha, which is a cedar wood material, will be kind of added around all the entryways to give some warmth to the property and building these feature frames out. The fitness center on the back is an addition. We did go through some options on reducing the hip roof, trying to keep the unit on the roof. Code requires a 10-foot, clearance around that and guardrails. So we felt like even if you went to a flat roof system, it would just be a really large box at that point. It'd be almost a 2-story box with smaller windows at the bottom. So we kind of felt like the hip roof was the way to go, even though there is about a 8, 9, 10% more angle to that roof than the other roofs. But the presentation covered it pretty well.
I think the only thing that I would add to that, and again, I believe staff characterized what we're trying to do here very well. As far as the fitness center goes, we feel like the original design is more in keeping with the character of the courtyard. You'll notice that all of the new modern elements are on the exterior of the building, but the interior courtyard is just getting painted, and most of the elements that are already there are remaining. And we feel like the introduction of the boxier vertical type of architecture is not really not in keeping to our way of thinking to the character of the courtyard. We would like to ask you to allow us to keep the original design, and if you would like us to look at some type of sunscreen element, that's fine. We can certainly look at that as as an addition or as an extension of the roof structure. But we really do, after looking at a couple of options, we really feel like the options provide. It's just not in keeping with the character of the interior courtyard the way it is right now.
Okay. Is there any public comment? Clint?
Mr. Chair, we don't have anyone else signed up for public comment on this item.
Okay, thank you. So now, if there's any questions from the committee to the applicant, this is the time for it. So do we have any questions? Member Lockyer?
No?
Okay. Member McCoy?
Oh, one brief question. The Porker share has, I see there's not an extensive number of lights, but can you tell me about the lighting feel, what's going on there? We don't have a spec on that, and how bright, it's very linear and clean, and it can be very warm or it can be a little overbearing. So what's your design aesthetic?
Typically, we're looking for a warm feeling to kind of go along with the wood. I believe we've designed to, I think it's 15-foot candles kind of around the space. We don't want it to be over bright at night. There is a linear light that runs through the feature frame right behind the portico that will shine down on the Nichiha wood material to kind of give it a graze across that. And the two stairwell elements too will have linear lights in there that will do a kind of a wall wash on the Nichiha on those locations too.
Okay, so you're saying 15-foot candle as you drive and step out of your car will be
Correct.
the ground. Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other member, Walsh, any questions?
No, not for the applicant.
No. How about member Poline?
Nope, I'm okay.
Nope. I have some questions. So is the modernization, is it part of a corporate rebranding, or is this just something you want to do to give a new look?
This this is a prototypical rebranding for Courtyard by Marriott. It was developed several years ago, and pretty much all of the elements are consistent with other older Courtyard properties that are being re-imaged, as this is called. The porte-cochere element and the feature frame at the front is very, very consistent with what you'll see eventually with all of the older Courtyard by Marriott properties. The stair towers can change just a little bit based on the original construction and on the exposure of each one of those elements to public view. But by and large, this is very consistent with Marriott's new brand integrity.
Okay, and is it is it consistent with the material choices and colors as well?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, and then for Mr. Harper, on the fitness center, what is the roof slope on that compared to the existing building?
The existing building, the two low roofs to either side of it, they're small little ones. They're about an 8%, and the fitness center I think is about a 12%.
Okay. And is there a rationale behind having the height of the roof or the space inside? I think it was 11'3" clear. Is that, do I have that right?
Yeah, typically with fitness equipment, because of jumping and moving and kind of weightlifting and all that, we try to get as high a ceiling as possible within that space. You do find in some older properties you get a lower ceiling at 10 feet, but sometimes it feels cramped. Sometimes some people hit it if they're taller on the equipment. So we try to get as high as possible. 11 foot is the comfortable range.
Okay. And then the other question is that I have is for the rooftop equipment on the fitness center. Do you need that large a well, or can it be made more compact?
I do. Well, I've got to have some air clearance around the unit to allow circulation within the unit and the intake, and then maintenance around the unit. So it's sized kind of based on that, clearance around the unit to work on it, and all the air intake. We could definitely go back and relook at it and see if we can shrink it a little bit. I just worry that it's going to become a maintenance issue, down the road with reducing the airflow into the unit.
And I appreciate that. But my question is basically to get more roof so you can lower the pitch a little bit, so it's a little bit more consistent with the existing building.
Yeah.
So if there's a way to shrink that, then you get a little bit more roof and you can potentially lower it.
Yeah. Yeah. We can look at reducing the well. The other thing we run into is because the code requires a guardrail, basically a 42-inch guardrail around any piece of equipment on the roof within 10 feet. So I've got to have that 42-inch rail, and I don't want to lower the parapet and then have to put like a bar or metal.
I understand.
Yeah, I think that would definitely reduce the aesthetic look of it. So we have thought about trying to reduce the roof pitch, but leave the parapet wall. But then it starts looking, really starts looking mansard-like at that point.
Okay.
It looks totally. Then it starts looking totally different than the aesthetic that's kind of there now.
All right. Are there any other questions? No, then that will conclude the questions, and the committee will discuss. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Did we lose Member Lockyer?
Let's see, Mr. Chair, he is still signed in. His microphone is on, but his video camera is off temporarily.
Okay. All right. So Member Walsh, any comments or?
Yes, a few that kind of occur to me that I think I would sort of break them into, first of all, the proposed fitness center. Being tucked back there, it doesn't have much, certainly no street presence to it that is impactful. So I suppose it's just a problem of solving it within the aesthetics of the courtyard. I think that the staff report gives very good advice in terms of the need for shading. That would call forth some level of elevation, articulation that would certainly start to make it look better. The roof structure is troubling. It does not look worked out. And I think that the difference in the two roof slopes, the proposed one for the fitness center and the balance of the hotel, are kind of apparent and tend to give the fitness center very much of a blocky look. I kind of think a bigger problem though is, in staff report number 5, the guidelines of, touch on architectural harmony and lack of. This is a tough thing to do to incorporate these two types of architecture. And my sort of thinking on it is it's a little more of an all or nothing thing. I think one of the problems is you're going to sort of stand back at street level on Tockwitz and see, the expression of some of these modern improvements, and the background behind them is the balance of the hotel, and both in terms of the form, the massing, and the materials. So I think it's kind of problematic. It's interesting that it has been tried and incorporated as sort of a repeated corporate upgrade in terms of imaging. I just think there might have been some other approaches that would yield a result that would work with the existing architecture and not make it look quite as clashed as it currently does. That's kind of a summation.
Okay, thank you. Member Pollak.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I like the design of the porte cochere and what they're trying to do, but again, when you see it right next to the sort of Spanish tile roof, it feels like it's kind of very alien in the layout. So I think there could be a little bit better job to integrate the design style between the two. Maybe not going quite so modern with the new piece, so that it does integrate a little bit better. I mean, the other option I was thinking was potentially and again, it's a cost issue, but if the roof could be painted or stained a darker color to match the darker brown, that could possibly work. But I'm not sure if that's an option. And then with the fitness center, I kind of agree. It's not on the street, so it's not that concerning. But I think if you did increase the eaves, the depth of the eaves, that would give you a shallower roof pitch and give you some additional shading for the glass as well. That's my comment.
Member McCoy.
I concur with what has been said so far. My other concern with the structure out by the pool is that the color is spec'd as pure white, and then you have glass and you have a swimming pool reflecting, and it's going to be a very unpleasant experience on the exterior of that building. With the landscape, I think the plant choices work and are appropriate. The planting spaces that are being added are a bit abrupt with such a broad lawn. The current look of perennials and lawn has been a long-standing Palm Springs look, and I appreciate the changeover up on the street to some desert landscape, but you might want to look at expanding some of that to make it flow a little bit easier. Also, the plant sizes are quite small, which most of them I think will work in your elevated planters with room to grow, but for your impact out on the street, a 5-gallon planted on 10-foot centers of a slow-growing plant is not something that's really going to give you a lot of impact that I think you're looking for with trying to create a warm, welcoming look to a hotel.
Thank you. Member Lester?
Nothing too much to add. I agree with what other folks have been saying here about maybe some of the abruptness between the new facade enhancement along the street frontage, south-facing facade, a little bit of a departure, and not necessarily in a way that unifies the aesthetics of the facade here. It also has kind of a sort of maybe this was the intent, but sort of reminds me of an old Western facade of a building here, where it's just kind of this fake false facade to it, which I think is a little bit troubling there, as you can see when you'll be pulling up around the porte cochere there, driving up and seeing this kind of side section elevation of the building. Some of the other things, I don't particularly have a problem with the white color, at least out back by the pool, but the roof, I think, is a somewhat simple change. The roof well, which I think is where you were going, Robert, was seems really oversized, and maybe a slight expansion of the overhang, and then pulling in the top end of that roof slope a bit, so shrinking the well, as you called it, on the roof seems like a pretty simple solution. It looks like there's ample room and still get plenty of airflow around that equipment. Looked like one piece of equipment on the roof. That's all.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I'm pretty much in agreement with the comments previously stated. I think the proposed upgrade for the entrance really does not fit the building. It conflicts with it. It's not consistent. And I think long-term, in another 10 years, when you decide to do another upgrade, you're basically taking something that a portico share, an entrance statement that fits the building, you're removing it. And then, in 10 years' time, there's going to be another corporate upgrade, and you've got this weird anomaly sitting on this building. So I think I would really like to see another alternative that utilizes the existing portico share and maybe adds to it in a way that is consistent with the rest of the building. I don't have a problem with the white paint color proposed or the light gray paint color, but when you get to the charcoal and black, I think it's really inconsistent and will be a very stark contrast to the building, one that is not necessarily beneficial. And the other comment I have is about the use of the stone. It seems very arbitrary just to have it at the base of the columns. If you're going to introduce a new material, you should look at other places that it can be utilized so that there's a consistency again around the building with using the stacked stone. And on the fitness center, I would like to see you come back maybe and look at either reevaluating the roof slope, and however you want to do that is fine. But I think you also need to introduce some sort of shade element around the glazing, especially on the south and west elevations. So with that, do we have a motion? All right, I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to deny and ask them to come back and respond to the comments that we have made. Do we need to review those, Flynn and Glenn?
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair, it would be helpful to review those. So the issues that we have are relative to, I'll start with the exercise building first, is to look at the roof slope on that particular building and also to incorporate some type of shading as part of that exercise. On the front with the portico share and the vertical piece is to perhaps look at integrating them better with the existing architecture of the buildings. On the stacked stone, being a little bit more consistent, not just at the base of the columns, but on other surfaces as well, or look how that fits into the overall scheme of colors and materials. And then on the darker charcoal gray and the black colors, those might be a little bit too dark for the rest of the colors that are proposed as part of the scheme. Does that capture most of it?
I think so. Anybody else? Did we miss anything? No, I think that's it.
I think I would add one thing, not to interrupt the flow there, but it just to sort of recognize the consistency of the existing architecture and try to work with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree with that. So there's a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? But aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Thank you very
Mr. Vice
much.
Chair,
Yes.
we will work with the applicant on those issues, Mr. Young. And Mr. Harper, we will contact you and start working through those. So thank you very much. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you. Now, is Mr. Jakeway coming back?
Let me just turn on his camera here, if you'll give me just a moment. Okay, and so Mr. Jakeway is back, and we just need to unmute his microphone.
How's that?
Yes, you're back, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Robert for being the chair during that last item. We're now going to move to item number 4, the DBK Group for a minor architectural application to expand the existing Shamrocks Irish Pub into an adjacent tenant space and modify the exterior facade located at 238 North Palm Canyon Drive. Can we have a staff report, please?
Okay, Mr. Chair, Ms. Kikuchi is going to be making the presentation, and we are just having her turn on her camera and unmute her microphone, if you'll give her just a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is a minor architectural review application submitted by Shamrocks Irish Pub located in the downtown area. Sorry, I'm having a technical difficulty here. The business is located in the downtown next to a parking lot, and as you see in red, that is the location of the business. The proposed project includes expansion of the existing bar space and a facade improvement. As you see on this existing floor plan, the business has an existing interior bar space and a limited outdoor patio area right next to it. The business is proposing to acquire the adjacent tenant space and expand the existing patio area. And the proposed project also includes the enclosure of a patio space in the rear as well. So this is what they're proposing to do for the facade of the building. They are proposing to apply a coat of eggshell white paint on the building wall and install a decorative vertical metal elements which will wrap around the existing circular columns on the sidewalks. And additionally, the business is proposing to install new door systems and paint the columns in green and orange to represent the Irish flag. And this is the view of the proposed new interior space and the patio space. Staff finds that the painting of the columns in the green and the orange will create acute color contrast, which is not really desirable for the building. And based on the submitted plan, staff recommends that the AAC approve the plans subject to the staff recommendation stated in the staff memo, which is the removal of the painted portion of the columns, this green and the orange, the accent element on the columns. And as I mentioned, this is our staff's recommendation. And this concludes the staff presentation. An applicant and staff are both available to respond to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Noriko. Does the committee have any questions of staff? No questions. Is the applicant present?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Steven Stevenson is present and will speak on behalf of the application.
Thank you. Mr. Stevenson, you have 10 minutes to give us a presentation on your project, and then we'll give you 2 minutes of rebuttal later if necessary.
Got it. Well, hello, everybody. This is a pretty easy one, I'm sure, for you guys, but basically, right now, Shamrocks Pub, it's currently a small bar with a lot of patrons, and we just simply need to give them some more space. building owner owns that entire building and leases out that retail space. And currently the lease is up. It's just month to month. So what he would like to do is expand the Shamrocks bar over into that space. So this will give him more front patio to Palm Canyon and more seating area for patrons. And that's about it.
Okay, does the committee have any questions for the applicant? Do I see any, John? Oh, no, sorry, that's John.
Did you say Sean, Tom?
Yes, Sean.
Yeah. There's a parapet detail on the building now, currently existing. Yep. How is the construction going to occur that it changes from what's going on along the top 12 inches or so of that existing parapet to what is being proposed now, where it's all completely smooth and flush and one up?
Correct. We would just fill in that detail so it'd be smooth. And then if you see on the left side where that proposed mural will be in the future, that's right now an existing patio space. We were going to fill that in. So basically we were just going to continue it on straight.
So, and that's stucco now above and below that reveal?
Correct.
And so you're going to, when you say fill it in, it's getting filled in and re-stuccoed over?
Correct.
And there's no metal drip edge going along the top or something like that?
Whatever's there currently, we were just going to keep. I haven't been up there to know exactly what it is, but it might be, I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We were just going to get rid of that little, detail, that indent.
Yeah, by restuccoing.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. And smoothing over that whole facade or that whole parapet above the tile roof area.
We were going to keep the existing texture. It wasn't going to be a smooth stucco. We were going to keep the existing texture, just painting it white.
Okay, I see. Okay. Yep. Thank you. So,
John Walsh.
Yeah, can you expand a little bit on the material of the columns? It almost looks like anodized aluminum tube, perhaps?
Correct. Okay. Yes, it's going to be anodized aluminum or painted in a dark, like oil rub bronze color. We're not sure yet. We haven't finalized the actual material, but it's supposed to be a very dark, either dark brown or black tube, probably 2x2, going up all the way around the columns. We're just trying to mask them, basically.
Okay, and then what would I see in between the vertical tubes?
It would just be painted the same color as the building.
And what would that material be?
So right now it's those existing columns on the inside caged in with that 2x2 material. So just instead of seeing the difference in brick and stucco, it would all be painted white on the inside.
Okay, and then another question is there is an enlarged perspective section drawing, and I see it looks like the supporting structure that spans from the columns near the curb back to the building will be replaced. Is that the case?
We were just going to fill it in.
Okay. When I look at the detail, oh, I could show you, couldn't I? Up here, it looks as though they are now dependent upon being supported by the roof eave, as opposed to, as they are right now, they span all the way back to the perimeter wall of the building for support. It just looks like kind of a whole different animal.
I'm sorry if it's confusing, but basically that trellis outside is going to stay existing. We're just filling it in so it goes all the way across. And it's kind of hard to tell, but it already has an existing little roof structure there. That's going to stay. So we're
that I get. It is just, it looks like you have re-engineered the support of all of that.
We did not, sorry.
Okay,
It's-
okay,
It's
That's all I-
basically going to stay existing,
okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
just fresh paint and filling in the gaps.
Anything else from the committee for the applicant? I have a comment. Where you're painting the mural, if you're standing at Crystal Fantasy or coming down the Pond Canyon sidewalk, you can see the mechanical equipment on the roof. It appears, and I hope this is correct, that you're raising the height of that wall to match the higher parapet on the front of the building, and that will camouflage that mechanical equipment. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then, did you give any consideration to, I'm having a problem with the columns also. And when I looked at them on site, they're heavily damaged, tiles coming off, things are cracked. Did you look at removing the concrete so that you're down to that, what probably is a 4-inch round pipe column, and then rebuilding those columns as square or rectangular? I think they'd have a little more character in keeping with the building, and the metal fluting kind of reminds me of tambour wood that everybody used in the 80s and 90s, and just seems a little like you aren't really updating anything. And the overall character of this is more of a Spanish or Mediterranean because of the roof tile and the exposed woods. And then it seems like you're trying to go quite contemporary with the metal on the columns. So did you consider some other options, or could you?
We did, and this was just one of those, I know the owner has a very good metal vendor that he works with, and we were just, trying to save him some costs. So that was reasoning really behind it. And we also, I don't know if you've been to Palm Desert at the Leaf on El Paseo. We used a metal called knotwood going up the paneling of the building, and everybody's loved it so far. So that's why we were kind of trying to bring that over here. But we are open to other items, but this is just what we chose because it was a vendor that he has.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you, Stephen. Our committee will have a discussion and we'll give you a result.
Thank you.
Who wants to give their first comments? Sean?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yep. So when I look at the existing building, especially around the corner, and this may be a comment for staff, sorry, also, I think I have a question for staff first. With the mural, is there a separate proposal or approval process for murals? And I thought the murals were not allowed.
Mr. Lockyer, yes, there is a separate process for murals. Those go through the Public Arts Commission and then to City Council. So if they'd like to do a mural at a future date, they would need to go through the process for that. So as part of your consideration today, we will not be approving a mural.
Okay. Yep. One other, so back to my comments. As I look at the existing building, it looks like there may have been more land or some landscape at one time. Currently, there's almost none. And so as you travel south down Palm Canyon, there's that large sort of planter bed, and there's 2 Mexican fan palm trees. That's going to be just north of the north patio of that building. And then where this mural's proposed, I mean, it all just looks like a kind of a hot, arid, lot of hard on hard surfaces here, horizontal and vertical. And I mean, I might just encourage some landscape improvements to occur here as well. And so I don't see much of that. I'm not quite sure about these columns either, or that I really quite understand the complete detail around how the columns are transforming to metal and what that looks like. And the same with the trellis. I heard something about continuing just what's there with the wood trellis, but I'm not 100% sure that's all been quite figured out, because on the existing drawings, they're not quite shown the way they are, with the roof tile kind of extends down along the west facade there, street frontage. I can't quite tell whether anyone's thought about they're removing that up to a certain consistent point. Not quite sure if you guys can see what I'm talking about there. Well, there's kind of a bump out of the tile area over the sidewalk.
Oh yeah, it comes down further and you get to like the third bay up.
It's inconsistent, yes.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if that's being stripped off or if anyone's really thought about that much. And then I see a bit of conduit running down. There's some lighting that runs down. It looks like ENT type of conduit, and potentially that's down lighting on the sidewalk itself. Is that in the lighting plan here, or is that being altered? It's probably a question. Sorry, I didn't ask earlier.
We weren't changing any of the outside lighting. And as far as the landscape, I don't think the building owner owns that parking lot. I think it's a city-owned lot, but we can always add that, or maybe add some pots around for some landscape to soften it up, kind of around the frontage.
So, and when we're talking about the landscaping, so as I look at the north side of the building, having a little trouble getting to it, but just north of the wall where the mural was being shown in a rendering a few slides ago, there seems to be a bit of a sidewalk directly adjacent to the north wall of the building. And then just to the north of that, what sort of looks like a tile sidewalk, there's a planter area there. And then in addition to that, in between the sidewalk and sort of that natural stone veneer wall where the parking begins, and there's 3 Mexican fan palms. Looks like a large bed of planting there. That may be what you're saying is not a part of this owner's project, but I wonder if this was something that was included, or a planter that was included in the development of this project. So sorry, that may be another question for staff there. It looks like it's become, plant material has disappeared over the years, and I wonder if somehow this is the time to address bringing some of that back. This building looks like it needs landscape is what I'm saying.
Yeah, Mr. Lockyer, I'll go ahead and jump in here. If there are any missing landscape materials from when the project was first approved, we as staff will go ahead and take care of that upon the permitting stage for this project. So we'll go ahead and address that separately with the applicant.
Okay.
And then to answer the trellis, ideally what we would like to do is the way we drew it right here, how you can see it, where we remove the tiles coming forward and we have the trellis wood going all the way across, and that'll just be all, whatever is rotted out, we're going to change and paint it.
So, and thanks for jumping in there on that. While you're on that slide, and I don't know if anyone can see the street view here, but I'm just looking at some of the lighting along that trellis, and that trellis looks, particularly at the northwest corner, the west side. You said a few minutes ago that you're just going to keep what's existing there and continue the existing trellis with some material further down towards the south and I guess potentially east, and cover up the areas that are voids currently. There's a whole lot of that ENT conduit. There's several different types of lights now. Some are facing out, some are facing down from underneath the trellis, some are on top of the trellis. I can't quite tell what they're facing, if it's the trellis or they were one time supposed to and now they're just kind of pointed at the sky. What's the plan for kind of cleaning up that mess?
At this point, we didn't have a plan because we were just kind of trying to extend the bar area. But I mean, it's something we can definitely update some lights and get rid of that EMT. Maybe while we're doing the trellis, we can move it underneath the trellis so you don't see it from the street.
Yeah, and I'd like to see a lighting plan with what's being proposed out there, especially, I think you mentioned you were just going to keep what's existing there also, and I think that would be a bad decision. aesthetically. Looks like a lot going on.
Sure.
Mhm.
Again, trying to watch the client's budget there, so, but I understand.
Yep.
Thank you, Sean. Anybody else?
I have a question.
Who was that?
Me, Robert.
Robert. Yes, Robert.
On the very south end of the shade structure, you'll see that there's a cantilever of a beam, and then there's no supporting column. And yet on your elevation, you show the trellis structure continuing. Are you going to be adding a new column over there?
I think the renderer just assumed there was one there. I think we would just have it cantilevering over. I don't think we're going to add another column.
Okay. And then in the packet we received, there's a sort of bizarre photo of a pair of feet and some like concrete. And my guess is, and then there's another picture of some of the tile work that's, I think, part of the concrete, part of the patio, and where it meets the concrete. So is there a plan to replace that, or what are you doing about the flooring material?
Okay, so the first picture, page 6, so that with the feet, that is the existing tile inside of Shamrocks. That
Okay,
is going to be extended into the new area. It also goes onto the patio. So the patio and the new seating area will all have that same tile throughout, extended.
okay.
And
All
then
right.
the next picture is the wood, and that's the wood that's currently paneled on the walls. And if you look at the rendering, that's what the wood will look like.
Okay, got it.
And then the guard railing, we're just going to match the same guard railing and extend it out. Of course, painted fresh, looking new.
Okay. All right, well, it'd be interesting to see how you resolve structurally that south cantilever with the addition of trellis weighing on that. And my assumption is, and it's just to clarify this, is the section where the tile roof extends forward, some of that's getting cut back and being
Correct.
trellis. Okay. All right. Thank you.
John McCoy, anything?
No questions at this time.
Thanks, John. John Walsh?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Okay, I have a comment. When you look at the photos towards the very back of our packet that are the vertical photos, you can see underneath the trellis, and it appears that the tile is just sitting on the trellis. I'm wondering if all of the tile should be removed. To end up with just that 3 or 4 foot strip against the building, it's not really adding any shade quality or waterproofing to anybody on the sidewalk or in the patio. And it might take away this conflict of, is this a Spanish style building? Is it a contemporary building? Where if we saw the new round columns and the wood trellis just going up to the parapet, I think that cleans it up a lot and makes it kind of a somewhat more cohesive. And Flynn, are we approving the signed Shamrocks that they're showing here, or is that a separate permit, or is that something you do at staff level?
No, that is something that is done at staff level.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, just quickly, on the flooring discussion, the terracotta, the existing terracotta tiles, are those going away as part of this and being replaced with the other tile?
What's on the sidewalk is staying. Only, what's within the building space is being replaced.
Okay.
And just texting with the architect, he said he thinks that's a good idea too. We don't mind taking off all the tile and just making it a trellis. It's not a bad idea. We were just trying to keep keep that blend of look, and the buildings around it all have the tile, so that's why we were kind of trying to keep it.
Thank you. I think we've heard from anybody. Does anybody have a final additional comment before we get a motion? Who would like to give me a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, before we go there, we missed staff's comment about the orange and green paint that's on the building. I can see up on the Shamrock sign is one issue, but where it's painted vertically on the sides of the column, does anybody on the committee have any strong feeling, pro or con on that?
I don't hate Tom.
Yeah.
That's another one where I'm not quite understanding the construction or fabrication of these new column surrounds. I don't know that I quite understand how these are being painted either, other than because I'm looking at the existing building now and I don't see these little strips to either side of a round column. I see a round column and then
I'm seeing exactly what you're saying. There is no flat horizontal
Can I jump in on that? Can I
well,
jump in
but
on that? real
rather,
quick?
no, I don't know about the jumping in, Tom. Up to you. But I think like if I don't understand it, maybe it's not being presented well with the drawing. So you guys know you've thought it out and it's buildable or constructible, and so do we.
Yeah, I think as far as the color, I don't think it adds any character to the building, and I think it makes it look a little gaudy. So I would not be in favor of those orange and green, just such little small panels as they are on the sides of the columns. Let the Irish influence happen inside the pub.
Okay.
I have a comment, and it's more discussion. Tom, at first I liked your idea of removing the tile, and because the tile looks kind of like it needs some work. But as I think about lighting, one of the comments I was going to make was that it would be great if they could integrate some lighting into the roof structure, or possibly even at the top of the half round, pilasters, sort of uplighting. If we remove all the tile, then there's no reflection. There's no real, I don't think there's a real clean way to get some lighting under that canopy. So just sort of something to talk or think about.
I get your comment, Robert, but I think with the proper fixture selection, and it might even need to be some sort of a custom mounting bracket or something, but it could be mounted to the beams coming out from the building towards the street, filling in that entire 16-inch wide beam bay, and be a downlight that's coming down. So I think there could be, as you look at some of the pictures in the back, you see right now the fixtures look like 1970s landscape lighting with little fluorescent bulbs inside of them.
Yeah. Anyway, just something to think about.
Do we have a
So, and I'll just add one comment. I mean, I'm not a fan of the existing columns. They look it's kind of bizarre. They don't really work. And I'm not too thrilled with the approach to shield them. So I'd love to see that be revisited a little bit more, because they just feel like they don't really work with the rest of the structure. They feel kind of alien to the rest of the structure.
Flynn, I'm going to make a motion and tell me if what I'm saying is appropriate, but I would like to move that we ask for a resubmittal of this project with attention giving to the actual materials on the columns and possibly not needing to stick with round columns, removing the tile from the trellis so we see trellis going all the way up to the building, and giving us a lighting plan and a lighting proposal with specific fixture callouts so we can see the exact lighting that's going to be installed in the trellis work.
Mr. Chair, I believe that's appropriate under architectural review. What I might ask, because this is a relatively small project in terms of its scope and scale, would you feel comfortable with having a subcommittee of the AAC details?
Yeah, so if we did a subcommittee, would that mean we approve it with these conditions and the subcommittee just reviews it to make sure the conditions are handled?
Correct. That's what we would do.
Okay, then I'd like to modify my proposed to say that we would approve this project with the list of conditions, and those conditions will need to be reviewed by a subcommittee of the AAC, but not necessarily brought back to the AAC unless the developer does not agree with the conditions that the subcommittee puts on. And so the conditions would be that the columns are restudied, both their material and shape. The tile is removed completely and the wooden trellis continues all the way up to the roof, and the lighting is restudied and specific lighting fixtures are inspected out and given to us for review.
Okay.
Can I add something or just clarify?
Yes, please.
Yep. Do you need a second first?
Well, okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Sean, did you want to suggest a modification?
Yep. So construction details, I think, should be included for the engaged pilaster columns along the building, and then those columns along the street. I don't quite know that I heard that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and I accept that amendment. And I think as part of the construction details, we can answer, I believe it was John Walsh's question about how do the beams that come out of the building to the columns at the end of the sidewalk, how do they attach to the building?
One detail section would solve all of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there is that issue at the southernmost missing column where that beam is not in existence currently, but was being proposed. I think they're going to find that it's not going to work, or there needs to be a column added, or there's an alternate change to the roof there. Wouldn't mind seeing that resolved. And then the parapet detail also.
Yes, that would be part of the construction details that we're suggesting or requesting.
Okay. So,
So we've had a second. Do I need to get in? Let's just to cover our bases. Do we get a re-second after we've made those additions?
No, because who made the motion and the second have agreed on the conditions that have been added. There is no need to vote on the motion.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Subcommittee, who would be interested in spending a half an hour or so reviewing this again?
I will.
Sean? John? Walsh?
Yeah.
Okay, can we have a two-person subcommittee, Flynn?
Yes, that's perfect.
Thank you.
And Stephen, we will go ahead and contact you and we'll work with you to get this before the subcommittee.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All of that administratively. Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, we've been at this for an hour. We're about to start a long discussion, most likely. I'd like to suggest we take about a 5-minute break and start back again at about 6:40.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, we will go ahead and take a break. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're ready to begin again. Thank you.
Okay, it's 6:40 and we are restarting our meeting with item number 5 under new business, Desert AIDS Project in partnership with the Coachella Valley Housing Coalition for an amendment to Plan Development District PD 281, a general plan amendment to change the land use designation from P/PQ to MDR to fixed use multi-use, and a major architectural application for the addition of 18,000 square feet of medical office space and the construction of a 61-unit special needs housing complex located at 1695 North Sunrise Way. I'd like to remind the committee that the first half of that description we are not discussing. We are not discussing the zoning, the planned development district. We are only going to be reviewing the architecture of the building, the colors, the materials, and the landscaping. And with that, do we have a staff report?
Thank you, Chair. So as you mentioned, the project is rather large. It's a 13-acre parcel that encompasses the entire DAP campus. So we are only going to be looking at the development standards, the massing, height, landscape, and architecture. So I'll go through some of these slides fairly quickly and then turn it over. Well, I also have a sort of fly-through video that I'd like to play that they prepared. And then the applicant has a more extensive presentation, and they can talk more about the details of the project. So just going through the 13-acre campus, which is shown on this slide, consists of the existing building, the old Riverside County building, which is now called the Annex, Vista Sunrise 1, which are the apartments that were built in early 2000s, the large parking lot, and then the new Sunrise Vista 2, which is in the yellow portion, and then the Desert Aids Project admin building, which is on the far right. So the entire campus is 13 acres, and the amendment to the planned development district, it will encompass all of these components. So the property is made up of multiple lots, and there's multiple cross easements to gain access to all the different elements of the campus. In this slide, it shows a closer up what they're proposing. So it's a realignment of the entryway off of Vista Chino, the new parking lot with carports, a dog park, which will be also a water retention pond, which is to the north on the left-hand side, and then the Vista Sunrise apartments. And in the middle is what they're calling the pavilion, which will link the two buildings together. So access to the site currently is off of Vista Chino and off of Sunrise. So there's a right in and a right out on both of these streets. They're looking to add a full turn movement between the Vista Sunrise apartments and the Annex. We're in discussions right now with city staff and how that would operate. So right now, that's where they're looking for a signal access at that point. So as I mentioned, the project is broken into several pieces, and the AAC may want to take these individually and discuss them. So this is the pavilion, which is the 18,500 square foot link between the Annex and the dental, behavioral, social, and services and wellness is existing. So within the new pavilion, there's a series of the lobby, the pharmacy, the food depot, the meeting rooms, a cafe, and then offices. And this will allow staff to circulate between the two buildings without having to go outside, which they currently do now. I would like to say along the bottom of the slide, you'll see that there are new canopy structures that are being added along Sunrise Way, and this will help with circulation for staff to go between the two buildings. If they do want to go outside, there'll be shade and a way to circulate around the building. When we discuss parking, we're looking at a shared parking scheme. There was a parking study that was included in your packet for the AAC to review. So when you look at the total number of spaces, when you use a mixed use between the medical offices and non-medical for both the pavilion and the Annex, and then the Vista Sunrise 1, and then the new Vista Sunrise 2 that's proposed, and then the business center, which is where the admin staff is, they're providing 376, or I'm sorry, they're required to have 376, and they're providing 457. So they're providing more spaces, and as you know, some of these medical uses, people stay longer, or they feel that the extra spaces are needed. So the pavilion is actually, this slide is wrong. It's 18,500 square feet. So I'd like to correct that. 18,500 is the total square footage. Maximum height is 24 feet at the entry. And the proposal meets all the other development standards in the P zone. So there's a series of slides that show the frontage that would be facing Sunrise, which is on the bottom. And then this is the new entryway, which is the height of this is 24 feet. And a series of posts and beams and horizontal elements. And we'll get more detail in a minute. So just going through these slides, the applicant will give you a very detailed presentation on the materials. There in your packet, there's also 3D renderings or drawings of the entryway into the development between the new Vista Sunrise apartments and the annex building. There's a series of streetscapes. And then the material board showing the type of materials that are proposed. There's also cross sections showing the height. You'll notice that the land slopes from Vista Chino down as you go south along Sunrise. So there is an elevation change. And then the maximum height for the Sunrise apartments, which we'll get into more detail, is 30 feet to the roof, which meets the development standards. And with a parapet, it goes up to 33, 34. Once again, some streetscapes showing the elements along Sunrise, the materials that will be used. And this is the entryway into the development from the parking lot. And also some other elements along the south-facing properties. So moving on to Vista Sunrise 2, which is the apartments. It's a 61-unit special needs housing consisting of studio and 1 bedroom and some one 2-bedroom apartment. So it is 60 units and 1 manager unit. The front yard setback is set at 25 feet. This does not meet the standard in the R zone, the R2 zone. So they are proposing as a part of the PD development standards that the city allow the setback at 25 feet. Normally it would be 30 feet. And the maximum height at the top of the roof is 30 feet. So I know that this slide is angled a little bit different. North is to the top of the slide. So the 25-foot setback is off of Sunrise, and I'm pointing it here. So the white dashed line is the property line, and to the front wall is 25 feet. How they're handling this is also, this is a 2-story element at the street level, and then they're stepping it back to 3 stories so that the massing is not as great along the street as if it was 3 stories right at the street level. I'd like to also point out the dog park that is, and the water detention pond, which is to the rear or the left of the slide. This sits below grade, so there's a series of stairs and a ramp that goes down into the dog park. There also is a pedestrian connection between the Sunrise Business Center and the rest of the campus. There's no vehicular connection right now, just this pedestrian entrance here. So in your packet, there are floor plans showing the different configurations of the studios, 1 and 2 bedrooms, and then a series of 3D renderings. I'd like to point out that one of the amenities of the new complex is a community building. And let's see. The community building includes a multi-purpose educational room, a computer lab, the case manager. There'll be an on-site case manager and a case officer. And this allows for potential renters to come and meet with the staff. And then there's a laundry room also that will service the residents. So the building materials are a series of the colors that are on the window elements are mosaic tiles, and the applicant will get into those types of descriptions. And we have the fly-through also is a very good video of what the interior of the complex will look like. So just flipping through some of these slides, you'll see the massing, the horizontal elements, the 3 stories versus the 2-story. and then interior courtyard views. Let me go through these quickly so that we can move on to landscape hardscape. So the AAC may want to break down the landscape hardscape into the Vista entrance, Sunrise Way entrance, the DAP or the pavilion entrance, Sunrise Vista 2, and then the detention basin. So those areas are all shown on this overall slide. Vista Chino over here, the pavilion entrance, the Sunrise Vista entrance off of Sunrise Way. And then these are close-up, blown-up versions of what they're proposing landscape-wise. So there is a plant palette that they're proposing, and they're listing several types of plants, types of trees, types of accent trees, and you'll see that there's multiple proposals. They're looking to pick 1 or 2 or 3 of these, and they have not decided as to what the exact plant list will be. Keep in mind that this is a preliminary PD review. There'll be a final review when they're 6 months out from submitting building permits. So the Planning Commission could send it back to AAC for a review at that time. And then more plant proposed shrubs, ground cover, vines, accents. Cross section showing, I would like to point out this section C. This is showing Sunrise, a landscape island, the sidewalk, and then the 25 feet between the property line and the edge of the new apartment building here. So there's a series of low walls that will go up the side of the slope with landscaping within. So Hardscape, they're proposing a series of pavers and tans and grays, boulders, ground cover of decomposed granite, benches that are wood and metal. The detention pond, dog park will have tubular steel, and then these poured concrete walls. Proposed lightings, pole lights, all decorative, bollard lights, carport lights. I'd like to mention they are adding carports. Carports around the 31 spaces that are adjacent to the Vista Sunrise 2 apartments, and then carports within the large parking field, and these will be solar carports, so they'll have solar panels on top. So this is a diagram showing the different type of lights that they're proposing. So what I'd like to do now, Chair, is stop sharing and then play the fly through, if I could do that.
Thank you.
Give me 1 minute here. I gotta exit out of here. Okay, we're ready. Can you see that? This is about 30-second play. And this is the Vista 2 apartments. Okay, so Chair, in your packet, there was an extensive 50-page presentation from the applicant There's also letters from the Rogers Ranch Neighborhood Coalition, and then a resident, Paul Auburn, in the neighborhood. And then you have the traffic study, I'm sorry, the parking study from the applicant also. So that concludes my report, and the applicant does have another presentation.
Okay, thank you, Glenn. First, before we hear from the applicant, let's see if the committee has any questions of staff. Any questions of staff?
Maybe one. Glenn, was there, yeah, did I read the parking requirements were satisfied?
Yes, they're actually 81 spaces over parked.
Wow.
Glenn, in your staff report, in the written report on page 8, you list the Vista Sunrise apartments as 31 units. Shouldn't that be 61 units?
Right. No, it's because the mixed use, we use a half of a space. So there are 61 units, but there's 31 parking spaces.
Required
Right.
spaces. Thank you. Any other questions of staff? I have a question, and Glenn, maybe this goes to engineering, and maybe it's not even something that AAC gets involved with, but as you look along the Sunrise property line, there's 3 driveways that are quite close to each other. Who actually approves that? Does engineering have to decide if there's a certain minimum distance between driveways? And especially now that knowing one of those is really probably going to be a signalized intersection. And as kind of related to this question, on what they're calling the business park, the condos to the south of that, the Ranch Club condos, some of their parking is accessed through the parking lot of the business center. So I don't know, and the guest parking for that condo units, they use the parking lot at the Sunrise Business Center. How do we approach that as far as, do they really have that many parking spaces there if some of them are being used by the condos next door? And what I'm really hoping is those 4 driveways along there maybe can be combined to 2. And one is the existing driveway going into what's now, I think, a service. Yeah. Is there anything that's accessed off of that to get into the building? Is that where deliveries are made, or is that just, what is that going to be used for?
Right. So when the applicant gives their presentation, they will discuss what this will be used for. And Rick Manharis from engineering is here. He can answer the question.
And is there a bus stop?
There's a bus stop on the east side where the inline shopping center is.
Right.
There's a bus stop on the north side by Walgreens on Sunrise, and then there's a bus stop in front of the Vista Sunrise 2 apartments on Vista Chino.
So the closest bus stop to this new one would be across Sunrise Way, but if you have a new signalized intersection, you would have walk controls.
Right, and there's a whole discussion of if this is a signalized intersection, if it's here or if it's down here where the Sunrise Business Center is, to help people so they don't jaywalk across the street.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, any other questions of staff?
Mr. Chair, before we start into those questions, if we could just have Mr. Manharis from engineering talk about the number of driveways.
Please, yes, thank you.
Good afternoon. We have been in discussion with the applicant's project manager and with the city engineer regarding the driveways and regarding the proposed traffic signal. And we've actually given them some direction to relook at maybe changing the location of traffic signal or completely eliminating it. The traffic signal poses some issues because we were looking at the ultimate build out of the northbound left turn lanes on Sunrise onto Vista Chino, and then those will have to actually be made longer. And then if they're proposing a signal at that intersection, or the between the new Vista Sunrise apartments and the DAP annex that would go into the shopping center, it would need a turning lane. And then, so we'd have some conflict there. So we've been having some discussions with them on what works, what doesn't work. They're going to have to do a little bit more design work and research to completely sell us on that idea, because right now it quite frankly, it just doesn't work. So we are still looking at that.
Okay, so that's just an unresolved issue at this point.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions of staff? Thank you, Rick. Seeing no other questions of staff, let's have the applicant give us. Before the applicant gives the presentation, I'd kind of like to poll the committee a bit. I see this as a couple of very different projects, and I'm wondering if we should architecturally look at the DAP existing building with the annex and the new addition as one consideration, and then look at this Vista Sunrise 2 apartment complex as a second consideration, because the materials are totally different, the massing is different, and I don't want us to get bogged down in trying to figure out which building are we talking about. How do committee members feel about separating them? Sean?
Yeah, I think that sounds simplified for us to review.
Okay. Glenn, could we have the applicant make a presentation on first just the DAP and annex and that building first, and we can discuss that, and then we would go and discuss Vista Sunrise second?
Well, I think their presentation is kind of, I do think they split it out, but it gives you some history, and I think they need to go through it, and then we'll have to split it out.
Okay, so then we'll do that. The applicant will make the presentation that they've prepared, but the committee can discuss it in two separate sections later. And this is a very complex project that needs probably a lot of explaining. So I'm happy with giving the applicant a little bit longer time than the normal 10 minutes. If they need to take 12 or 14 or 15 minutes to make their presentation, I think that's appropriate.
Am I on now to make the presentation?
You're on, Rule. Yes.
The sound is okay?
Yes.
Give us your name, please.
My name is Rule Young.
Hey, Rule.
I work at Interactive Design Corporation. And Glenn, I guess the only way to go slide by slide is to say next or something along that line.
Rule, I have your script, and I'll try to follow along and advance it.
Okay, I'll probably truncate the script a little bit to bring it into focus.
All right.
This is the slide of 1999 when DAP purchased the building. And you can see it was vacant all the way around. There were a number of different property owners, the City of Palm Springs, County of Riverside, RDA, and private property owners. Could I have the next one, please? Next slide. In '99, DAP did a master plan to bring about a full service campus that would provide health and social services, housing, and administrative services. And the first step on that was Vista Sunrise 1, 81 units at the top right of the image. And the parking was prepared as well for a new standalone clinic, which on the next slide shows there. And that was built by the County of Riverside, not following the site plan of the master plan, but doing their own site plan within the land that they were leasing from DAP. 10 years later, that was done in 2006. 10 years later, DAP purchased the vacant lot to the left to address some of the 300 people on the waiting list for the existing apartments. And then in 2019, they purchased the White Brothers building to be a standalone administrative services building. So that's the full campus, 13 acres. Next slide, please. With all the range of existing facilities. Next. The issue that comes up is the site constraints. Because it was done piecemeal and the county did a plan that did not follow the master plan, we have three problems that are significant. One is what Rick Manharis was talking about, is how you get in and out of the project. You cannot go north, you cannot go west legally from the existing configuration. People do it, they scoot across Vista Chino, make an illegal U-turn, they make left turns out of the driveway at the south end, across, they make a zigzag out and around, and people make U-turns in one of the condo entrances. In addition to that, we have this very odd intersection at the midpoint. And then now that DAP has purchased the county building, purchased it in 2018, we have two front doors. And a client could be walking, as the drawing shows, 300 feet to the front door and learn that they have to go next door. So that's the constraint of the physical existence right now. Next slide, please. So our design response, the initial thing we did was try to clean up the circulation, ingress and egress, as well as on-site. So we reconfigured and realigned the drive from Vista Chino. That does two things. It allows us to have sidewalks so that people are not walking in the driveway, and it creates the space for a bridging building between the two. Additionally, we've made the decision that the front door, if you go back just one for a moment. Yeah, thanks. The front door is closest to the parking now. That will be the central front door. And we created a drop-off that has enough room for 3 cars to park, pull out, and so on. And the southern drive that was talked about is now, as proposed, is designed, a signalized that would allow people to exit going north, and then they can make the left turn to Vista Chino or go north. Next. So that was the site constraint problems. The next problem is a programmatic one. How do you bring together two disparate buildings that have a 2.5-foot grade difference so that there is one point of central registration? The tan area on the top with the green star is central registration, with Walgreens to the left, a cafe, and offices going north from there. Equally important, oops, thanks, I appreciate it, but equally important is the symbolic entrance to the campus at Sunrise and Vista Chino, and the fact that we have 2 entrances there. So we recognize that from a design response, we have both the internal street to frontage and functioning, and the external on the streetscape. Let's go to the next one. This project is also proposing under Coachella Valley Housing Coalition 61 units, 60 of which are affordable, 1 on-site manager, 4 studios and 1 bedrooms. It's a courtyard configuration with all the units, almost all the units, accessing from the courtyards. I'll talk about the frontage as a separate thing, but that's very important, and Glenn was talking about it. The retention basin is being reconfigured, so it will be a park. It's a 2-level park, so that in the vast majority of its use as a detention basin will be on the upper portion, which is 3 feet below the lower portion, or the portion closer to the house. And as Glenn said, there's a walkway and golf cart access from the office building to the left. Next. So that the total build out will be solar panel over the parking at the major west side. And then what is important here is that from that parking, you'll see 2 lines, and the landscape architect will talk about this. Lining the driveway that comes from Vista Chino are both shade trees and shade arbors, so that the story of a person getting out of a car is not walking without protection and without shade all the way to the front door. Next. So the design response architecturally, as Mr. Jakeway spoke about, is, wait a minute, we've got 3 buildings along the front. One built in 1981, remodeled in 70, 82, 94, and one built in 2006, and now a proposed one. So the campus entry is important, as well as the drive entry between the existing annex and the apartments. And then lastly, how do you alert people? How do you communicate on that scale that this is the front door? Come here and you will start the registration process. Next, please. So we're highlighting the Sunrise frontage, and there are 2 green stars representing symbolic entrances. If you look to the right of the star on the right, you see that there's an angle. The angle is an existing arcade, shade that entered a night entrance for group meetings that's no longer used. And no, further to the right, good guess. There you go. Yep, and even more to the right. There you go, okay. We decided we did not want to have the mitigation between street and building be orthogonal. We picked up that angle and we said the first thing we have to deal with will be the campus identity. So if you go to the next slide. So this is what's there now. There's the entry mass with the flat angled arch and an arcade to the left of that, a pyramid over the mass, cubic mass, and to the right you can see the columns of that arcade going to the right, and a pretty insignificant monument sign right there, yes. So but that monument sign is at an angle, and what we wanted to do was pick up that as the first step. So come to the next slide, please. So there are 3 elements that we wanted to introduce that would mitigate between the existing buildings and even the new building on the west side. And those components were ground plane, either cast in place or rammed earth walls, steel frame with horizontal louvers, and plain panels. In this case, on the entry monument, they're obscure glass colored, but we introduced those horizontal panels, which then get picked up as I never get the right pronunciation, brise de soleil, shading on the building. We decide we're going to do very little demolition. The only major demolition is to take that pyramid roof off and add sort of a foreground to the mass with a horizontal blade roof. So the horizontal lines of the louvers, the horizontal blade roof, and ground plane cast in place concrete or rammed earth are the elements that begin to bring continuity between very diverse buildings. If we could have the next, please. So here's the county building, where it's now the annex. It's got that copper roof over a central corridor that bisects the whole building. 2 sides of that corridor are these plaster prisms. The one on the right has kind of odd outward tapered or battered walls. We're going to pick up again an angle to a shaded walk that allows for staff to go from the annex building to the DAP building. Now what's important, and I want to raise here, is the drive you see on the right-hand side with the car coming out will be where the pavilion is at the back end. That is the delivery only, service and delivery only. There is the trash enclosure, there is an emergency generator, all of that kind of back of house stuff. And part of what we're trying to do, if we could see the next slide, is to bring the buildings closer together. And we're doing that by the horizontal lines on the shaded arcade or arbors. And if you come across to the county or the annex, we introduce those ground plane walls at angles with steel posts and horizontal louvers to shade windows and the walkway. And then over the existing, under the existing roof, the sort of soaring angled roof, we're introducing another blade horizontal roof. we're trying to bring these entries down in importance, make them also have some continuity between the one at DAP and this one. Now we're going to go one more. So this is the driveway that would be widened for capacity, and if allowed, we'll have the traffic signal. It's the back of house of the annex building on the right, and the future housing will be to the left. And here's where I want to, Glenn, if you could circle the plan at the bottom. Yeah. So here's where we're now changing those cast in place walls or rammed earth walls from being at angles to being orthogonal. We now want them to be a direct extension and mediator between the orthogonal buildings behind. And as Glenn was talking about, the closest our building comes to the setback is 25, the property line is 25 feet. The county building is at 12 feet. It's 18 feet tall. Ours is 24, 25. So, and it's 2 feet lower. So there is some mitigation of scale, and the entire articulation of the apartments is blocks of apartments broken down, not a massive block as is the annex. Could we have the next, please? So here's where the landscape becomes very important. We're using a palm tree planting. We're using the orthogonal walls and a formal planting of ground plane material, all of which at driver eye level brings the building closer to the street and sets the building further back. The apartment building on the left has, as Glenn talked about, a 2-story component along Sunrise. Further back is the 3-story. So this is looking northwest. So you can see the annex, the soaring copper roof on the far right. You can see the ground plane, cast in place walls. And then we were distinct in wanting this to be an international style as defined by simple off-white, I think it's, what's it called? Dove white or dove, something like that, plaster with the apartment building windows ganged up, and then below which are fiber cement panels, and those are the accent colors. And again, we're using blade horizontal roof over those windows for shade, and also to pick up that vocabulary earlier. This is going to be tough, Glenn. Oops, go back. It's going to be tough, but I'm going to, you see about 2/3 of the way back, there are 2 walls that are coming out, 2 wing walls. Bingo. Those are the stairwells. And so we're introducing these blade walls to again break down the massing of the apartment complex. So it appears from, in this look at view, that we have a 2-story unit, another 2-story unit, 3-story unit, and then this penetration at the stairwell and beginning that again.
Mr. Young, if I could have you pause for just a minute. Mr. Chair, we're at 15 minutes of presentation time. Would you like the applicant to continue?
I think it would be important, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn. Next, please. So this is the looking south. You can see the angled wall at the campus sign. You see the former entry revised, the louvers connecting the walkway, and the apartments in the back. Next, please. Now the internal street, west facing. From the left, we have apartments. The small green star is the Food Depot and Night Walgreens entry. A large star is central registration, and then a cafe, offices, and so on. And that's the drop off. Jeremy Franzini will talk about the landscape composition there, but you can see black lines, horizontal, seat walls with arbors reaching from the building out to the parking. Next, please. So this is looking southeast, apartments to the left. Just a minor thing, every corner in the apartment has a recessed balcony so that the frontage at the corner is 2-story, 3 stories are set back. On the DAP building, we have this high entry. We wanted to create it as an institutional civic scale. So it has that blade roof steel columns, and then a lower roof below that. Even on the higher roof, we introduced the horizontal louvers for shade. And you'll notice coming out from that, you'll see the blue columned arbors with horizontal shade to bring the comfort and welcome from the building out to the drop-off area. Next, please. And this is looking northeast. That's one of the arbors. From the entrance on the right, we go down to plaster boxes that have a variety of material and material primarily, some subtle changes in color. And when there are windows, we provide those window shields as well. And you can see it far to the left. Those are horizontal louvers, ribs coming out from the building and having the horizontal to shade the windows and the walkway that is up against the building. And one more and I'm done. Looking northeast, apartments, Food Depot Plaza. Yep. Entry, cafe with terrace, offices, and Vista Chino. So that gives you the overview and
So Roel, you have the landscape architect who can speak if the chair would like for a few minutes.
yes, he's here, I believe.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Jeremy, go for it.
Just to introduce myself, everyone, my name is Jeremy Franzini. I'm a landscape architect at Michael Baker International. And I'll just spend a few minutes going over some of the landscape concepts that we've worked on. The overall site plan here, you can see we really we're trying to enhance the whole user and pedestrian experience for people coming to visit the site. We worked very closely with the architect and the client to elevate the landscape design throughout. And Roel's kind of touched on a few things, so we'll just kind of reiterate here. We looked very closely at the entrance from Vista Chino and how that's going to work. We've got some enlargements to look at. We looked very closely at that Sunrise entrance. I'll go through those in a second. The Sunrise entrance was very important, but also in talking with our client, the parking lot area became very important, and how to deal with patients that are on site that are not feeling well, and how to get them from the parking lot into the building became a very important feature to again, to create a better user and visitor experience to the site. So we can look at these in a little bit more detail now if you go to the next slide. This is looking at that main drop-off area. So Roel mentioned we've moved the main entrance now to the south, which is closer to the parking lot, to decrease that distance that users and visitors will have to walk to enter the building. What we've done is we've also increased the amount of shade that happens in the parking lot between the carports. And then you can see this entry area where we've got shade trees on both sides of the entrance. This becomes now more of an entry plaza where the vehicular traffic can still pass through the main drive aisle unimpeded, but we've got drop-off zones on both the east and west sides of the entry. On both of those sides, we also have the shade trees and the shade structure that ties in with the architecture, along with the seat wall. So if people need a place to sit or need a place to rest as they come in from the parking lot, we're starting to have layers of shade. So we're not solely relying on trees. We're not solely relying on shade structures. We're trying to use both so that we can have a layered effect. And then that we've tried to really enhance the entry experience through this linear passage of walkways and the rammed earth seat walls. Again, yes, through the section here, you can see the shade structures on both sides of the entry, the shade trees, the seat walls, and the landscaping as you layer and transition from the parking lot into the main pavilion. This is looking at the Sunrise Way entrance as we transition from the main roadway on Sunrise and are using these rammed earth low walls as, again, a transition from the roadway into our campus, where we're also using a more formalized landscape treatment with double rows of palms and formalized structural succulent plants below, so that we are formalizing the entrance, but we're also providing screening to both those buildings that are flanking both sides of the entrance. And this becomes our transition from the roadway into our project site. And then on the right portion of the slide, you can see we're also, again, bringing in this plaza concept, because that's right where the main entrance and the multi-purpose room is for the multifamily housing. So we're slowing cars down, we're increasing the pedestrian experience as people enter into the CVHC building site. Then again, we've already talked about the retention basin dog park. It's an amenity that we're adding for the public to make that upper tier of the basin serve also as a dog park. It's the only place where people can get out and circulate and experience a little bit of nature, and that detention basin should be usable the majority of the time. And we're just trying to basically add another amenity to the site. These are the main hardscape materials that we've talked about. That upper left image, you'll see what these rammed earth seat walls look like. It's very nice striations of color that are very natural, that work with the desert landscape. We're using decomposed granite. The pavers, again, to creating that entry plaza effect and this linear effect, work with all the horizontal lines that are also happening architecturally, and then using some crushed rock and cobble and boulders that are going to tie into some of the existing materials that are already found on site.
So that's the end of the presentation.
Thank you. Interesting and complex building, so we'll have probably a lot of things to ask about. Do we have questions from the staff, from the committee for the applicant? Who wants to go first? Don't see any hands up. I've got a list of questions. Should I go through some of mine? Main question. Did you ever consider removing the copper pitched roof that's over the annex?
Am I on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rule, did you ever consider?
We did not consider taking the entire roof off. We are taking the back extension off at the line. It might be the best thing to do is go to the, Glenn, can you go to the overall site plan? Oh, there you go. Okay. So the end of the annex building on the left-hand side, the darker tobacco colored corner. Okay. The roof extends a little past that. We are taking the roof back to where the faded tan, where the word annex is, we're taking it back to there. And that will be a new roofed area with skylights and light wells for the pavilion. We did not consider doing it on the front, and partly because what would we do other than have two oddball plaster masses unless we spent a great deal of money re-roofing it. So we took a more direct approach by bringing in the blade roof below, leaving the tall one there.
On one of the site plans, it shows that existing sunrise access to the annex is exit only. Is that true? This will not be an entrance?
Which one is it?
The sunrise side entrance into the annex under this big pitched roof, not the driveway, the pedestrian access.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, right there.
Okay, ask the question again.
Now on your site plan, it shows an exit only there. It does not show that that's an entrance to the annex. Is that true?
That is accurate. The reason is security. We have one point entrance for the building at central registration and security, and it is an exit only for staff.
See, that to me is another reason the pitch roof should be removed at Sunrise, because as you look at the building from Sunrise, to me it implies here's the entrance, come in here. And I think you made a great point that you wanted to direct people to the entrance on the west side of the building instead of this one on the east. Another question, is there going to be any vehicular connection between the business center and the rest of the campus?
The grade change does not allow that.
Okay, but it appears when we're looking at the site plan that there is a pedestrian access right below the dog park,
Yes.
pedestrian connection. Okay. The service drive, could that be a gated entry? Both so that people don't visually see into there, but so that people don't turn into there when they shouldn't.
Good point. I can see the logic of that. I don't want to make a promise, but I can see the logic.
Yeah, okay. On the back, on the new pavilion where you've got those long slot windows, I really like that detail and the look of the frame that you have around them. I just wonder if they should be slightly higher, because if I'm inside walking along that window, I'm not being able to see out. And if someone's inside, they're just seeing my shoulder.
Yeah. Truthfully, the height of that was established at 44 inches for a stand-up Starbucks bench for computers. Go over there. And so it may not, I honestly, I cannot tell you what the dimension is, but it was from eye level stand up and down.
Okay. Was there any, I find looking at this entrance on the slide here of to the new pavilion, the roof seems awfully thin and light.
Yeah.
I really like what you did to the entrance on the Sunrise side, the way you framed it with that other material. Is there any consideration to making these the two entrances relate more to each other architecturally?
Let me share. I also have felt some discomfort about the skinniness of the roof there, but from the beginning, we had the feeling, and this is why we have the two roofs. High roof to communicate openness, transparency, welcome, and lower roof for scale and shade. Both layers will have horizontal shade elements to block the western sun onto the street. So I don't dispute that there is an argument to be made. The two entrances should be similar, but the intent on our part was we wanted this to be transparent. We wanted this to be more open. We were using what was there on the Sunrise side. So I hear the logic. It's not consistent with our goal in terms of what are we communicating.
A minor question. In the cafe, will there be a commercial kitchen there? Are we going to be dealing with a lot of equipment on the road?
But I still can't get anything different now.
No, there will be no cooking in the cafe. It's a
grab and go kind of thing.
Yeah, more like Starbucks.
Yeah. And the last one is on these on the shade structure that we're looking at right here. It's kind of whimsical, but it kind of doesn't. It's not repeated anywhere else. But having the legs be fat on the bottom on one side and thin on the other, and then taper up, and the top being crooked, it's kind of a Gaudi almost weirdness. And I don't quite know how I feel about it. I just want to make that as a comment.
Well, the fact that you reference Gaudi in the verbiage we did talk about Art Deco. So there is a streamlined sort of component to it. I think it came from a desire not to be a exact replica. It wasn't taking one and saying, now shrink it down to a quarter the scale. It's subjective, it's not arbitrary, but it is definitely subjective.
Right. And my last question would be, if the copper roof stays, the end of the roof closest to Sunrise is supported by round pipe columns. And I notice you've put round pipe columns on the lower level roof that you have there, where on the back roof, it's more rectangular or square columns. Do you think it would be more cohesive to revise the pipe columns on the Sunrise side to be more in keeping with the columns you have on the back side of the building?
So
there's two existing pipe columns that are at an angle, and then you're putting two new ones on this lower roof that you're adding in.
yeah, we thought that was a way of bringing those two components together. And the west facing, we really weren't trying to bring too much continuity between the two. We wanted there to be one component, that is the blade roof and the horizontal thing, but the backside and this we feel are very different approaches.
And just looking at this elevation to the left of the entry, those windows that are quite flat and plain.
Yeah.
Is there any opportunity to put the same trellis work that you have on the right side where it wouldn't be a walkway, it would just be kind of a folded shade over the window like you did on the back side of the annex?
I understand what you're saying. Yes, I think that would, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry I went on so long. That was a lot of stuff, and maybe somebody else on the committee now has some questions or thoughts as we brought up a couple of topics. Anybody else for questions for the applicant? Nobody? Am I not hearing people? Flynn, is everyone turned on?
John Walsh had questions.
Yeah, I can certainly see the challenge of with a site that has multiple penetrations to develop a prioritization for them and a clarification to the vehicular traffic as to where to get in and where it leads. Rule, can I ask about the pedestrian experience? If I were to take public transit and land at that bus stop at Vista Chino, how do I mean, what is the experience like in terms of entering non-vehicular?
Excellent question. And that has been a significant conversation. Glenn, if you go about 4 slides forward, 5, 6, keep going, no, you're going back. No, you got to go forward. Keep going, please. Oop, oop, oop. Back up more. Okay, back up one more, back up one more, and one more. Okay.
Right.
This drive, as it was conceived and designed, is the signalized traffic signal.
Right.
We do not want to diminish the fact that there are problems with it. There are much bigger problems without it. And all along that drive on both the right and left side, there are ground plane landscape and trees on the right-hand side. It is the back of house. It is where the trash enclosure is, emergency generator, a place is a sidewalk, not greatly welcoming.
Right.
Yeah. And every building that's built on a major street has the problem of having a presence that is welcoming and at the same time knowing that you're going to enter the building from the parking side. That was a discussion very early on, and we made the decision that the main entrance would be from parking because it is not safe to have the main entrance on Sunrise.
And can we go to site plan, Glenn? I have a question. The housing specific parking rule, is it all contained adjacent to the Vista Sunrise 2 apartments? Does that cover all of the parking for those units?
Yes.
Okay. And then I guess my last question, in the development of the retention pond, it sounds as though the dog park is not fully worked out in terms of what the full landscape recreational components would be there. Is that the case? Is this the entire thing would be dog park? Is there more going on than just that there?
It is not yet fully defined.
Okay, got it.
Anything else, John?
No, thank you.
John, do you have anything for the applicant?
Okay, so where you were talking about the entry, one slide back that you were on, at that Sunrise Way in front of the buildings, is there any client tenant space up there that is expected for usable space for the tenants?
Oh, hold on, I'm sorry. Glenn, John McCoy, you're asking the question about Sunrise, correct?
Right, okay, so the slide that's up,
okay,
on the left side of the Vista Sunrise 2 sign.
Yes.
Is there anything over in that area that is client tenant outdoor public space that is usable, or is that purely?
There are no doors or patios on that side.
Okay.
It is foreground for the building.
Okay. Then the parking surrounding that building, the client parking, client tenant, we've got what appears to me to be a weak access from the apartments to the dog park area. Very solid circulation throughout. Even from the Sunrise 1, you've got a beautiful connection over to the recreation space. Can some of that parking move a little bit east towards Sunrise to perhaps give a more gracious access point over to the park?
I have a question. I think what I would challenge us to do, if you look at the, how to describe this, upper right corner of the Vista Sunrise Apartments 2, the building itself, there's a walkway across. It's a skinny little walkway.
Right.
Nope, to the right, please. Yep, nope, right. Yeah, there. I would enhance that. I would address that driveway entrance with greater paving and landscape. And I would ask the question, I don't know if we can do it, can we lose one or two spaces so that becomes a corner that has an amenity? I can't promise, but it says we have more parking than required. That would be the client who would allow that. But that is the way I would respond to what you're raising.
Okay.
Rule, it looks like on the left side where the letter A of apartments is, that row of carports might be extended one or two or three more down towards Sunrise to make up what you're going to give up at the top row.
Exactly.
Oh, guess what? We have a main, Glenn, can you go back to the photograph? You might have to go forward. Go forward. about 3 slides. Keep going. Keep. I want to show the slide. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. No, you're going back, dude. I want you to go forward. I'm sorry, not dude. Forgive me. 1 more, 2 more. Bingo. Oh, you see those power lines?
Yes.
We have a renegade connection between those power lines and 1445. And there is a major switch vault far to the left, and that's what stops the parking on the side end from going any further east. We have a switch which eventually will have, which eventually will, we think will serve this, this apartment complex. That's where they're gonna underground all those lines that go west from Sunrise. So the answer, Tom, is we can't go further east.
We tried, thank you.
Okay, last spot, the handicap parking, just, let's see, at the, what is that, north, southwest corner of the pharmacy shopping there. You've done a great job of shading and comfort throughout the site. Just that spot feels a little hot. Is there any room to add a little bit in there? I know you've got a loading zone down around the corner, or loading dock. So I understand why that is cleared out a bit. But yeah, in that handicap zone, is there anything to?
What?
Is there any space in there to
As it's
add a tree or two?
As it's configured, no. And I think the balance that would be discussed from the client and the city and the designer would be that the need for handicap spaces trumps the need for shade at that location. I don't want to lose handicap spaces there, so I'm sorry it's hot. I get you. But that is, so I don't want to promise we could solve it. That's what I think the discussion would, where do we prioritize and how do we maintain as much handicap parking as possible closest to?
Okay.
The plaza itself is covered by a roof and shade trees.
Okay. That's all I've got for the moment.
John Lockyer?
Yeah. Just going through the landscape plans, and maybe just need to refresh my memory. But along the east side of the building, so along Sunrise,
yes,
the existing buildings there, there's not a lot, if any, kind of enhancement to the landscape, and particularly north and south of the service entrance drive.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get to a broader question here. When I look at the traffic study slides, Glenn, if you could zip to those really quickly. There was this one which showed some really obvious red arrows that were, I guess, speaking to the unsuccessful nature of the ingress and egress from this site for vehicular traffic, and he gave a few examples. And then go to the one that, the slide that potentially solves these issues. Like, take a look at Vista Chino, for example. I don't see that anything's changed that solves the 2 red arrow issues from the previous slide. Maybe I'm missing the.
It's controlled by Caltrans, and we cannot do anything but do right in, right out there. We could not legally put a break in the median, though there is a break to get into Albertson, and people scoot around going north on the I mean, going west on the eastbound traffic and trying to get over. So people do it. It's true. We can't.
So understood. So that slide along Vista Chino doesn't solve anything. But go back, Glenn. Would you mind flipping back to that one? Yep. This slide though shows a couple of very similar things where folks are trying to go north when they should be going south along Sunrise. I'm talking about. Go to the next slide if you can. Is there something changed here?
Well, yes, the median will be removed.
Okay.
And signal, and there are 3 lanes coming out of the site. There's a left turn lane, a cross lane, and a right turn lane. And then the median will go south from that intersection. And Tom Jakeway, to address the point you made out that there are these 3 driveways in a row, the middle one will have a median that blocks any traffic to the left. And we don't believe there will be bleeding from the traffic parking through the apartments and out that way. We don't think that will be.
So, yep. So there's a traffic signal now right where I see the green arrow pointing east from that southern end. Yep, right there. And that will allow people to exit your proposed project and head north on Sunrise, or no? Okay.
You could turn left at Chino to go west.
You know, if you go back to the slide, I was asking about the service entrance also and the landscape along Sunrise. One of the issues was the multiple driveways along Sunrise and how it, I guess, presents some misleading opportunities for people to enter into the project.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's it appears that the first entrance anyone could turn into the project as they're heading south on Sunrise is, well, more of the service entry just south of there.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's being done about that to discourage people from thinking and feeling like that's a legitimate entrance for people? And I know Tom brought up the potential for a gate there. I wonder if a gate's the answer, there's quite a bit more that could be done along Sunrise on the east side of all of these buildings here is where I'm going. So maybe you could take a minute or two on that.
I think the issue that you're raising is important. I don't know yet what the best solution is. The landscape along Sunrise is not has not been addressed by the landscape architect yet. At the far north end, we're retaining the mature olive trees, and that ground plane will be leading up to the Caston Place walls and campus sign. And candidly, there's a question to the client about the foreground at the symbolic entrance. That is Hardscape. That is currently used as an entrance to Walgreens. Walgreens is just inside that pyramidal area. And we have not thought that through.
Okay.
Mr. Lockyer and Mr. Chair, if you could give me just a moment. Nicole Christ had a response to one of the previous questions. Nicole, do you want to jump in?
And Nicole, what's your part of the team?
Chairman, my name's Nicole Christ. I'm with Terra Nova Planning, and we're helping to manage the project through the entitlement process.
Thanks, Nicole.
I wanted to address the traffic question maybe from a more technical perspective. Although there will not be an increase in traffic movement or an increased ability in traffic movement on Vista Chino for the left out or the U-turn at Sunrise, if a traffic signal is allowed by the city at our main driveway, traffic is very much like water. It flows to the point of least resistance. And so people who would want to go west on Vistacino would exit on Sunrise because they'll have an ability to make the left and then a left again on from Sunrise onto Vistacino.
It makes
That
sense.
is
Thank
part
you.
of the analysis that we've done for the traffic analysis.
Mm-hmm. Well, sounds like one of your only options also, and makes sense. I think. Can I keep going with a couple more comments?
Yeah,
here?
please do.
Mm-hmm. So, just like, let's look at this site plan again, the one that shows some detail along that east side, Sunrise Way. There, as I look at that service entrance there, and is there a rendering of that you can jump to quickly?
19.1 in the large brochure you have.
Okay.
One of the things that we're doing is narrowing the drive and carrying one of the, on the north side, we're bringing the shade structure closer in. So it, rather than lining up with the building, it's lining up with the trash enclosure. Glenn, if you go back 2 slides.
So it's 18.1?
19.1 shows the elevation.
Yep.
So you see the shade structure goes beyond the building and aligns with the existing trash enclosure. And so Mr. Jakeway's suggestion of a gate, we could look at that. It would be at a low level because that's the entrance for trash trucks and service trucks and so on.
Is it a delivery entrance also?
Yes, it does have delivery purposes as well.
I'm not sure that it's not being enhanced by what's going on here as an entry versus being downplayed and discouraged people to enter that way, was where I was going with that. And you're adding some structure. Is this a new concrete? Was this one of the sorry, not cast in place, but I think you said this might be rammed earth material there, or was that not this location?
The rammed earth and cast in concrete have not been determined fully where they go, but it would be the elevation on the upper right corner of 19.1 does show an extension of one of the cast in place ground plane walls and the steel post and horizontal going beyond. And what you're saying is that makes it even more attractive to drive in there. Is that what your point is?
Maybe. I think so. I'm having trouble figuring out the predominant entrance out of the 3 along Sunrise if I'm looking to get in there. And so, and I'm also looking for some enhancement along, architecturally and landscape wise on your plan along the more public street facing facades. And as I look at the landscape plan, there's a lot of attention given to the interior of the project, and it seems like less so on the exterior. And I think I care more about the exterior on the landscape wise and architecturally than I do on the interior. just looking at the plan. So for the northern half of the Sunrise side of the project, and maybe the eastern half of the Vistachino side of the project.
One of the issues that we would need to explore and has not been explored adequately is retaining the hardscape at that entrance. There was discussion about it being a place that had a ceremonial component to it. That's why we have bollards as opposed to a blank wall. But the questions you're raising, we can look at more carefully.
Okay.
Anything else, Sean?
No.
Okay, Robert, you have some comments or questions?
There we go. On the apartments, so the driveway to the south, is that meant to be the main entrance for the residents?
That's a very good
We go to
question.
the
So, right, okay. Okay, good. I would say that
there we go. Good.
You're asking the question, are you asking the question, if I am a resident of the apartments, how do I get into the parking area?
Right. And I'll clue where I'm going. Is it possible to eliminate that completely and have the residents all use the main driveway?
Excellent question. We have to bring in the fire department, and you have to do an incredible job. At one time, we had an exit only, as an egress only. We were prevailed upon that it needs to be both in and out.
Okay. All right. And then, all right, so that's, I thought it was a fire department issue. I was just wondering if there was a way to reconfigure the apartments to reduce that or eliminate it, and maybe make everybody come in through the main entrance, and then maybe do a double loaded parking as you turn left into the apartment area. But it just, I do understand about the fire department, but I was wondering in terms of the 300 feet, whether, you know, where you are and if it's even feasible.
We explored that with the fire department, hose reach, length of drive, and we could not do it as you're suggesting.
Okay, all right.
Robert, not to take away from your question, but this totally relates to it. Rule, could the entrance to the business center and to the Sunrise Apartments be combined into one?
Well, the business center driveway is also used by the Ranch Club.
Right.
So are you saying eliminate the drive to go a little bit further to the right, Glenn? Yeah, eliminate that. Is that the question?
Yeah. And come through that parking lot to come out the business center driveway.
If we did that, let's explore that. We have the issue, there's a slight grade issue. There's also the turning radius for the fire trucks. And the third is then we would reconfigure the parking in that existing parking lot. So is it geometrically possible? Yes. Would the fire department have something to say about it? Yes.
Well, I think it's something to explore.
All right.
And maybe you split the difference. Maybe there's a new entrance to both that's centered between those two driveways that you're showing on your plan now.
That's a geometry that's possible, but ownership in terms of easement, that's a challenge.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, Robert, I'm sorry to interrupt in your...
Not at all. And then just to explain to me, in the park, at the west end, there's some sort of walkway, ramp or something, that comes down. And I sort of picked up that might be a golf cart access. Is that right?
Actually, I think that's a spillway. I think that the walkway down into it is, stop your hand just for a moment. Okay, whoops. Is you see in the northeast corner are the curved steps. To the left of that is the walkway into the park.
Yeah, and I'm talking about in the southwest corner coming down.
I believe that's the engineered spillway for water.
Okay, all right. And if it is a dog park, do you have intentions to fence it?
I'm sorry, you broke up. I did not hear the question.
Yeah, if you do use that as a dog park, do you have intentions to put a fence around it?
Good question. That has been a part of the conversation. I don't know what the decision was.
Two major questions I had, so thank you.
Steve, we haven't heard from you. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I mean, the only comment I have, I mean, I think overall the project's really well thought out. My one comment is that the main entrance to the pavilion in the back feels underwhelming to me. You know, I think the entrance created, actually the entrance off Sunrise into the annex building feels to me more sort of a statement than the entrance into the pavilion. So that's a kind of disappointing part for me in the project. But otherwise, I think the reskinning of the two buildings to integrate them together, I think is really well thought out. Yeah, so that's my comment.
John Walsh, did you have anything else?
I did not.
Thank you. Roel, I have a question. On Vista Sunrise 2, it appears to me that there's only one elevator, but that's going to be servicing 40 units. And heaven forbid, if we still have social distancing when all this comes up, you can only put 4 people in an elevator at a time. I would really suggest you talk with your client about at least one more elevator so that there's not a bottleneck for people, especially the people on the 3rd floor in 17 units up there are probably not going to be taking the stairs. And you have 23 units on the 2nd floor, so some will and some won't.
Well, I hear that. And we will have that conversation.
And I will say this, I know that some of those decisions were probably made by budget, but I have to congratulate you and your client. When I told Flynn this, when I first looked at this, if I hadn't been told it was low income housing, I never would have assumed that. It's a great job for, giving some quality and respect to this, to a project like this. And I think the biggest challenge is you're setting the bar awfully high for anybody else who wants to do projects like this in town. And I think it's great.
Thank you.
The one thing you didn't discuss is on the Vista Sunrise, on the material boards, I see a lot of different tile panels, colored tiles.
Yes.
And I'm not exactly sure, and I can see them inside the courtyards. Are they on the exterior of the building?
Only,
or is that all paint?
Only at the entry to the community building, that one slice, and one of the other stair towers has them. But we had intended that more playful component would be on the interior. Some of we tried to bring the same kind of I can't find the right word, but unorthodox, little playful in terms of the railings on the corridor walkways, the balconies.
Right.
So one of the fly-throughs showed these things with a curvilinear top, and we wanted to bring life to the interior as opposed to it being static.
Well, that was one of the best things for me about the flyway is it really did show a variety of different handrails that aren't shown on the other renderings. So it's nice to see that it isn't just one typical metal section throughout. There will be some life to it. Okay, any other questions? Robert?
Yeah, Tom, just the plans, just an observation that a couple of the unit plans where you have the living room off of the corridor walkways, some of them, that's their main source of natural, and some of them are corner units or they have potential for large windows in the bedrooms. I just wonder if you might take another look at some of those unit plans and see if you can't get the main living spaces to get more natural light than what you currently are showing.
It's a critical component. We will look at it. Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
And Rule, one other thing I noticed, especially looking at the floor plan for the third floor, it looks like you have two dead-end corridors that might need additional stairways. One's on the right side, right under unit 1-12-3.
Yeah.
And one's on the very left at unit S-1-3.
Yeah. Tight code review. The way we interpret it with the rating, the fire rating and the distance, we think we're good.
Okay.
We have looked at it, but we think we're good.
Okay. Anybody else have questions or comments? Rule and Jeremy, thanks for a nice presentation. We'll discuss this now amongst the committee and give you an answer.
Thank you.
Glenn, I have a question as far as how we move this ahead, especially on the landscaping. There are no call outs for plant material sizes or plant material quantities. To me, it's just more of a very basic concept plan. Is it possible for us in our motion to say that we approve the concept, but still need to review the specific plan when it's prepared?
Right, an example of that would be when you looked at living out. There was sort of concept landscape plans, and when it came back for a final, you had more details. You had a legend with sizes, quantities, and types.
Great, okay, thank you. Committee discussion. John McCoy?
I think it's a beautiful plan. I fully concur with your comments about the low-income housing is beautiful. And I very much like the landscaping in amongst that tight quarters. The trees and things are providing privacy and shade and coolness in there that is very attractive. I will say you've got a Ulmus parvifolia, I believe Ulmus parvifolia as a parking lot shade tree. I would like to recommend they pull that one from the shade tree list. It drips sap and it's a very messy tree that isn't very conducive with cars. The other plants within the list I think are all nice choices, and I look forward to seeing what they pare it down to. Couple of the dog park, I agree with the comment. I'd like to know what happens there in terms of usage, what's going to be fenced, what's not, how the access flows a little better. In the evening, you've got beautiful specs for lighting, fantastic fixtures, and with the way that they're laid out, I think it'll be beautiful. It also says or similar. So if it is the or similar, I hope they will pay close attention to what the or similar fixtures actually do versus what the specs do. Up in the very southwest corner, diagonally from that very corner is residential. You've got a tall pole fixture that I don't think the neighbors will appreciate very, very much. Is that corner parking lot really requiring that level of brightness with the neighbors that you have? Underneath the canopies, there's a lot of light spec'd. As you've got a residential area, can that be toned down as hours shift deeper into the night? Can some of them be on timers to switch off? Bringing more conducive nighttime feel to the space. I think it's a great plan. I really like the quantity of shade. I think it's a great job on the Sunrise Way. I concur with Sean's comments about entry and perhaps some more landscape up there. I will stop there.
Thank you. Who else has a comment?
Looks like John Walsh.
John Walsh does.
Yeah. I think that one of the key things that I can appreciate is the complexity of the problem. It seems to have layers to it. One, you have a site with pre-existing conditions and pre-existing buildings. The second is the whole challenge of the vehicular access, how to control it and how to clarify it. And then the third is the programming elements that you're dealing with. So I think all in all, it's a successful and an intriguing solution that you've put together here. The success, I think, of the housing, looking far better than low income, has to do with the building massing, holding back the third floor, the breaking up of it. The things that you pick up as benefit in that seem to be more light exposure on the sides, as well as a reduced building massing. The attention to shade is critical. A lot of projects we see just, it could be in the Bay Area, but this thing has an awareness in terms of traveling from point A to point B, being protected from the heat. The canopy structures to me seem a little bit fragmented. I kind of get the whimsical attempt at having them be a little bit inconsistent, a little bit quirky, but I'm just not sure I'm on board with that. The unifying element of the louvers on the sunrise elevation is wonderful. I think you've taken a lot of dissonant elements in terms of the aesthetics, the building and the massing, and you've kind of quieted them down successfully with emphasis on the horizontal line and shade. That works well. And then the last thing I would mention is, this is really good because it's almost an urban planning problem inside this one little site. So your solution seems to put high value on every piece. Nothing is unaccounted for, all the way down to the dog park. So I kind of kudos for that type of thing. It's like using every inch of the stage, every inch of the palette to kind of deliver on this thing. That's it.
Thank you. Who else? Do I see anybody hands up? Steve, do you have anything else to comment on?
Yeah, again, I'll just reiterate, I think the project is really well thought out. I think the reskinning of the buildings to make them more integral is really wonderful. And I think, my only concern is that it just feels like the main entrance inside to the pavilion is a bit underwhelming, and it just doesn't punch as much as I would hope it would. That's really my only concern.
Okay, thank you. Sean?
Nothing else to add.
Okay, thank you. Robert, anything else?
No, not really.
My final comment, we haven't talked about it yet, is about the colors. And if everybody can look at page 31 in the big handout they gave us, they're calling out the body color as a dove white, which is letter A. And if you look at the west elevation, which is the bottom elevation, it is quite white. And if you look at the top, the south elevation, the same designation A is on a much more of a taupey or gray sort of color. And I know we're not seeing a true paint sample of drawdown. So I would hope that the color, when we get the real color, would match more what we're seeing in the south elevation rendering than what we're seeing in the west elevation rendering. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, if I might just summarize some of the issues that you all will want to see as part of the final plan development district.
Yes, please. That would be very helpful.
Number one was relative to parking lot tree shading. Mentioned a specific tree that they should look at replacing. Also investigate relative to the dog park, the access to that and fencing of the dog park. That's something that they should resolve when they come back to you. There's a couple of minor tweaks to the lighting plan that we would like them to look at. Two of the Architectural Advisory Committee members talked about the canopy structures, one at the main entrance as being underwhelming, the other structures as being somewhat fragmented. So if we could have the applicant look at that when it comes back for the final plan development district review. And then finally on the colors, what we will want to see is color samples being provided to the Architectural Advisory Committee so that we can verify truly what those will be on the building. So those were the key comments that I heard in your summary. Is there anything else that you would like the applicant to look at as that comes back for the final plan development district and conditions that we would then?
Yeah, I think the other was the notion of how to handle the service entrance and minimize that so it's not seen as an entrance into the complex.
Okay.
Good work, Steve. Thank you.
Two things.
John?
Yep. Tom had mentioned, and I didn't reiterate on it, but agreed that the roof structure and the potential for abandoning the existing roof structure. I think you said, Tom, but correct me if I'm wrong, it was something about the east side, but it may have been the whole entire central roof structure of the annex building.
Well, it sounds like they're already removing part of it on the west side. So if the whole thing were to be changed, it might give them more options to have it look a little more cohesive.
Mm-hmm. And then I had that other item about the landscape along Sunrise. Re-looking at that, and then the sort of the east end of Vista frontage of the property, adding landscape, thinking that through, something that enhanced the architectural elements there.
And Flynn, a question, not to make it part of the motion necessarily, but can we ask that our comments be passed along to the Planning Commission? That I think the signalization of one of those intersections is crucial, and if they could work with Sunline to see if they can get a bus stop on the west side of Sunrise so that people aren't having to cross that street.
Okay. So those will not be part of the motion, but rather they will be comments that are forwarded on to the Planning Commission.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, who would like to make a motion using the list that Flynn just read back to us?
I so move to approve with the conditions as listed by Director Flynn. Flag.
Thank you, Robert. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from John McCoy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No one's opposed. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Rulin, you guys, you did a great job.
Yes.
Okay, that finishes our agenda. Are there any committee member comments or staff member comments, just about things in general? Mine would be a question. Are we still dark in August, Flynn?
Yes, Mr. Chair, you are dark in August. At this point, we are potentially looking at having both of the September meetings. The first would be on September the 8th, and then the second on September the 21st. At this point, those will still be via Zoom, but we do have a couple of applications that we're starting to back up, and so we will probably go to 2 meetings in September, just looking at our calendar thus far. So if you could keep those dates and be available for the meeting on those dates, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, any committee member comments? I just want to congratulate the committee for such a big, complex project. I think we really gave them a good review, and I think it was very comprehensive, and we didn't get bogged down in detail, so thank you to everybody. I'll move we adjourn.
Okay. With that, we're adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.